The sports you love, the teams you can't live without.
Get a sense of urgency!
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Jake Scott, Ben Anderson. Nominate the youth sports volunteer you know for the Hercules Hero of the Week. Submit your nomination at kslsports.com/contest and listen every Thursday afternoon to JJ and Alex for the winner. Help us celebrate the efforts of those volunteers making an impact with the Hercules Hero of the Week, sponsored by Hercules First Federal Credit Union and Beehive Meals. Joining us now, of course, he's my co-host for Jazz Pre, Half, and Post. He's the one and only Coach Tim LaComb. What's going on, Tim?
What's up, y'all? I appreciate Christian bringing us in with a little no doubt reggae vibe. That was nice.
Christian's tried to keep things upbeat today.
He's hip. Yeah, he's cool.
He's sensed some dissatisfaction from the listenership, and so he's trying to kind of keep the vibe good. You know what I mean?
Did something bad happen?
Okay, and that actually leads me to my first question. How bad was last night, actually? You know, certainly the hope was the 14% chance to get Cooper Flag, and it would have changed the direction of this rebuild. But realistically, you know, let's say they had gone 2 or 3 or 4 versus 5, which is worst case scenario. How much did last night change things for the Jazz?
Well, I think, you know, the way that it went down, it's not so much that they're 5. I mean, my good friend Jake Scott told me all year long, Coach, don't get your hopes up. They're going to get 5. Did you not tell me that all year long?
I did, all year long.
Yeah.
Yep.
And obviously I was playing Tankathon, and oh my gosh, I got 1 this time. But it's crazy number of times I did that through the season, and the number of times the Jazz came in at 5, you know. So it's wild. But the way that, you know, those big markets lined up in front of the Jazz, it does hurt. Because when you think about Philly, when you think about San Antonio, they're in a position to really be in the catbird seat on big trades, acquisitions, because they have picks higher than the Jazz, you know. So there is a pecking order, obviously, to how that all works. And, you know, the Jazz, if they could have gotten perhaps, you know, the 3rd pick or something, maybe it allows them to do a little bit more. But with those 2 teams parked in front of them and perhaps willing to deal to get the exact right piece, I think that's where it hurts the Jazz. Obviously, everybody had Cooper Flag in a Jazz jersey, and that's now not realistic, but he will be playing in the West, as will, you know, the 2nd pick, and it's just crazy the way that it lined up. I think it was a pretty devastating outcome, and you know, it's not life's not necessarily what happens, but what you do with it. So now it's really you know, Ainge and Zanuck and the front office move to figure out what they're going to do now.
So what do you think, Tim? Are there other players? You know, I know you probably haven't completely immersed yourself in your draft prep quite yet, but, you know, you all over college basketball. Tell us about a couple of other of these guys. Anybody stands up, worth trading up for, that sort of thing?
Well, there's, you know, I think that obviously the draft's in a couple of tiers. There's one guy, you know, at the top, and that's the no-doubter. And then I think Harper probably fits into 2 in every other scenario. The guys that probably could be available at 5, depending on how it goes down and if trades are involved and that sort of thing. You know, you're looking at a guy like Trey Johnson from Texas, who is a big, long, athletic, scoring guy, you know, that definitely fits the mold of the new age NBA with spacing and being able to be very versatile at a big size. He had a good year at Texas, but he's down a couple of levels, obviously, from Flag. Derek Queen, got to see him make the game winner for Maryland in the NCAA tournament. You know, another intriguing prospect for a lot of different reasons. So I think there'll be guys, and we'll dig into it more. But it's, you know, it's different than perhaps getting one of those top couple picks. BJ Edgecombe's another name that's out there, Baylor kid that measured a little bigger yesterday in the combine than I thought he would. He's 6'4.5", I guess, in bare feet. So he's explosive, a scorer. I would assume he probably would be gone before that pick, but perhaps, we've seen guys move around. So another guy to kind of keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think outside of the top two, and even if the second pick gets traded, which I think is somewhat realistic, I just don't know how solidified the top 5 is, really, and we got to remember how quickly things change leading up to the draft. Regardless, I think looking at where the Jazz are sitting at number 5, Coach, do you still think it's a high-value pick? Like, do you think it's fallen out of a tier to the point where, it's a major drop versus what they had hoped to have?
No, I mean, in reality, you would most years be really excited to have a top 5 pick. And if this front office has proved anything, they've proved that they can find guys, with unique skill sets. And so the work just is different. You're looking through a different group of guys. Another guy that stands out had a really great year, and it was a little dampened or shaded by playing with Cooper Flagg, but Con Knippel at Duke he's just a fabulous player. He's a guy that really gets it and understands where the ball needs to go and how, plays with the right level of energy defensively. So another guy that could pop in there. But again, it's just you're changing your sights. It's you're out of the Flagg, you're out of the Harper game. So now it's like, how can we? And maybe the Jazz decide to move. If it comes with some value and they can change their team a little bit. I think that's what's intriguing, though, is it can go a lot of different ways from here.
What'd you think about Dallas, of all teams, getting the number 1 pick?
When they said Dallas has moved into the top 4, and Rolando Blackman, gave me – he was a phenomenal player, by the way. I lived in Dallas when he was there. But he gave it that big grin. I was like, Dallas is getting this pick. And – it's just crazy the way that I guess those top 3 picks in that way, if you're betting on a triple or a trifecta in the Kentucky Derby, if you picked that, the odds were 0.0114. So pretty crazy the way that thing landed.
Is there a position you wouldn't draft because of talent the Jazz have on their roster right now?
I don't think so. No, I think in Oklahoma City, some of the teams, Boston, they've proven that you really what you need is a bench full of guys that can do a lot of different things. A guy like Peyton Pritchard for the Celtics, who's just, so good for them, 6th man of the year, was, a guy that can defend, can shoot, can play make. So, yeah, depending on how it falls, I would imagine position's going to be far less important perhaps than talent and fit.
Is there a specific skill that either its absence is such a red flag now that you would pull them off of a draft board or at least push them far down, or one that is so important now that you would push towards the top of your board? Like, is there a must you have to have in today's NBA?
Well, I believe, and it's always the way we've recruited, when I was involved in basketball, a guy's got to be able to make baskets. He's got to be able to shoot. The guys that come into the league, and shot sub or in the 20s, it's scary because you see the spacing in the NBA. Now, if that guy's got the ability, and I speak at Isaiah Collier, he's got the ability to be a one-man fast break. He's got the ability to make passes other guys don't make because he has that vision. Then, the shooting takes its place, and you say, then you really evaluate the stroke and can we improve it. But in today's game, man, I would be really reticent to take guys that can't shoot. And especially where the Jazz are right now, I think you've got enough guys that can create. You've got guys that can get to the middle of the floor. The way Will plays is that thing is well-spaced. And, the penetration is either for yourself, and you find that out pretty quickly, or it's to move that ball. And it ends up with a guy most of the time shooting 3. So I would say that would be a really important thing. And obviously that a guy like Yegor, can he prove that in the combine? He had a much better shooting experience in the tournament, which was good. But like that's a guy that you look at and say, does he have enough of the other stuff? Where if his shooting never really comes around, he can still help us.
What position does he play in the NBA?
I think he's a point guard.
Huh.
Yeah, I think he's a point guard. I think his vision is great. He's obviously got to add some strength. You know, the league is a man's league, and Cody Williams learned that this year. So the physicality part of it, you know, he's got to bulk up a little bit, I would assume, but I think he'll play the point.
As you know, Coach, I'm rarely wrong, but
ever. I've never caught you. I've never caught you
Not once.
But your wife has. So
that's true.
Shout out to Ness.
In this case, though, going into these playoffs, I definitely was wrong. I thought this was Boston's to lose, and I thought the West, as dominant as Oklahoma City had been, was you know, they were certainly going to be heavily favored. And they don't look unbeatable, the Thunder, that is. And then certainly after last night, you know, Boston's going to have a tough time coming back in that series. So it's cool because the playoffs are super wide open. I mean, it's anybody's ball game.
Yeah, and really, you know, it was, and we talked about this, Jake, during the season. As the season really kind of came to an end, Indiana was a team people weren't talking about. They had a great run the year before. You know, people like to joke about Tyrese Halliburton being overrated. Bottom line is that team's a team, and they're playing like it. And, you know, they have really made Cleveland look silly. And so that one, I'm excited because I actually picked that one. But, yeah, Boston, that's a surprise, especially New York. And I've got to throw out my apology because it was just last week that we were kind of trying to figure out who was the worst of the best. And Jalen Brunson's name kept coming up. I think it's time we give that dude – he needs to get to the next level because this game is about winning, right? It's not about the regular season. It's not about how many times you can score 50. It's about your team winning. And Jalen Brunson, regardless of where he's been and regardless of what we think about their coach or their team or – like that dude just puts teams on his back and takes them to the next spot. And so my apologies to Jalen Brunson.
It's amazing. Yesterday's as good of an example as maybe we've ever seen, but the league just changes with such violence so quickly, seemingly every 6 months, and if not every 6 weeks. You know, again, think of where we were before the trade deadline, where Luka was in Dallas, and we didn't know what the future of the Lakers looked like, to where Dallas is today compared to a week after the trade deadline, where everyone thought they were dead in the water after trading Luka. And now the Boston Celtics, who Jake and I argued whether or not there are dynasties anymore in the NBA, and looked like if there was ever a team that had a chance to be dynastic in today's era, Boston might have been the front runner. And we don't know if their future exists beyond the summer. Can you prepare for the unpreparable of what the NBA has shown us over the last 3 or 4 years now?
No, and really, I think that's another talking point that Jake and I had to find a lot of things to talk about this year in the big picture. And one of those things we talked about was just that really the NBA is so cyclical and that things happen so quickly. And even more so now with stars that, you know, just aren't, you know, we saw with Jimmy Butler, just not going to play until you move them. It really is imperative to be prepared for those moments and to have your feelers out there. I mean, like this whole Giannis thing, we saw this coming 100 miles away. You know, I knew that team from the beginning was destined to fail because they just refused to defend. And so it's just – so now Giannis is going to be on the move, and that's going to change the power dynamic. And I do know this. I mean, that's how this guy Ainge made his name, is he's always been ready for stuff like this. And there's going to be more. You've got – the Phoenix movement, perhaps, you know, they're in such a bad way. You've got the ability, you know, San Antonio can sit there with 2 and really be choosy about what they want to do, but their projections with the roster they have now and what they could have is absolutely crazy. We need to look into who holds stock in the NBA in San Antonio, because that thing is it's just crazy how it's like the Jazz always fall and San Antonio always rises.
Ben thinks the Spurs are going to move number 2 for Giannis.
I could see it, dude. And how scary would that be?
I think you look at the big bodies we've seen in the NBA, the freak bodies, and I say that term lovingly. Joel is one of these bodies, and Zion is one of these bodies, and they are breaking down. Chet has had 2 major injuries already in his career, and he's smaller than Wemby is. Wemby's had blood clots already. I just think if you feel like Wemby's ready to be a top 10 player, and you made a trade for De'Aaron Fox and a win-now trade, why would you put off time to invest in Dylan Harper and hope in 3 years he's ready? Like, we don't know where Wemby's going to be in 3 years physically. I might just kick the door down, win a title, and then if I trade guys after that, whatever, who cares? As we're saying, the league is so unpredictable now, you may just have to try and operate today because you can't plan on tomorrow.
Yep, 100% right. And I agree with you, Ben. I think if you can get a ready-made freak, somebody you don't have to develop, somebody that's already been through all of it and has a reputation, and you bring them in as opposed to, a talented young guy, but we've seen a lot of talented young guys come and go. I think that is the move for the Spurs. And I do believe, obviously Dallas holds the number 1 card and they're going to get Cooper, but that second pick, and that's why it does. Like the Jazz, if that's them, the thing's completely different. With San Antonio being 2, Philly being 3, the Jazz are at 5 now, so they've got to kind of see what happens with those. But that would be my move 100% if I was in San Antonio.
Competing for a championship anymore, it's almost like a lottery in itself because we're a week away from the teams being left over are the Thunder, and I'll just even include the Nuggets. Let's say they go to a Game 7. We'll say the Nuggets, the Thunder, the Timberwolves, the Knicks, and the Pacers. That's 6 teams. Go back to the trade deadline. Where would you have ranked those teams as far as championship odds 1 through 30 in the NBA? I mean, like, the Pacers might have been 15.
Yeah, 100%.
In the past, we knew who the 4 best teams were in the NBA, and those were going to be the 4 teams that competed for the title. You honestly might just need to be the 15th best team in the NBA at some point, middle of the season, and hope you get hot and have a chance to win a title. And that might be where the league is now. And that's just such a radical change from where it has been in years past that you don't need a perfect team anymore. You got to stop aiming for perfection and being afraid of just being good.
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing I'll add is, to put all I know the conspiracy thing has been rampant. In fact, I took a taxi, sat in the back of the taxi on my way here and told the taxi driver all about it. But the bottom line is if there was a conspiracy, would they really have Minnesota and Indiana headed to the finals? I mean, I think the unpredictability at the end of the day, even though sometimes that unpredictability is harmful to the Jazz because they seem to not be able to, regardless of the ownership. I thought, okay, this new ownership, Ashley's going out there, this is going to break the whole thing. 5.
How's our guy Sam doing today? He's doing all right. For those that don't know, Tim's son Sam might be the biggest Celtics fan I've ever met in my life, and I imagine he was not pleased.
Haven't had a chance to chat. Typically avoid him after losses.
Yeah, tell him to hang in there.
He's like his dad. When he loses, he doesn't talk to anybody. No, I will. Hey, man, he got his flowers last year. And as you guys say, it's hard to do. It's really hard to do.
He'll be all right.
By the way, tough night for the Ainge household last night, right? They took the double whammy of falling to 5, and they still have Celtics people.
Yeah, right. Rough.
Yeah.
That's a rough one for the Ainges.
Danny, they fell to 5, and Austin lost. It goes down 3-1. That's not a good day for the Ainge crew. But
loses Jason Tatum.
It's not what happens to you; it's what you do with it. So that's where we go from here.
That's right. It's how you play that hand, Coach. You're the best. Thank you so much, as always.
Yeah, I love you guys. See you.
That's our buddy, the coach, Tim LaComb. He likes your Spurs Giannis idea.
Look, I actually think big picture, if you want to take an optimistic view of what's going on in the NBA, because I'm doing a podcast today after our show and do my mailbag, and a lot of Jazz fans are just like, what's the point? I'm like looking around the NBA and saying, like, man, this thing is wide open. The Jazz, I think, entered this rebuild with the idea that you have to be near perfection to win. And 3 years later, that's just not the truth.
Yeah, it was certainly not true right now.
The Knicks aren't perfect. The Knicks are extraordinarily far from perfect.
The Celtics were pretty close.
They were pretty close, and that doesn't matter.
Yeah, and then they're an injury away. Yeah, no, I hear you.
The Timberwolves are good. They're far from perfect. Julius Randle was the most ick player in the NBA 12 months ago, and he might be headed to the finals as the second best player on that team. 2 months ago, right? Yeah, in all honesty.
No, but the truth is he's still kind of ick. You just don't have to be perfect. I agree with that.
Yeah, you just don't have to. So where the Jazz felt like they had to climb to the top of Everest now to win a title, you might just have to get it to, Mount Olympus. Timpanogos, there's a walkway. You might be able to get there. You might not have to be the best roster you've ever had to get a title. It's kind of interesting.
Sorry, Ben, I'm a little distracted. There's like multiple stories that I'm super into that are just
There
ongoing.
are. I see one that we should talk about on the other side.
All right, stay tuned. We'll have more Jake and Ben coming up next. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Accessing.
This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G.
The head coach of the BYU Cougars, Kevin Young.
Coach, I got to know, with what you've put together, how excited are you to get this 25-26 season rolling?
Yeah, obviously, AJ gets a lot of those headlines, but then you tack on the return of Richie Saunders coming back, and then you bring Rob Wright in, who's obviously a heck of a ball player. I think we have a nice blend of continuity from last year's team and blending in a lot of high-end talent, which on paper looks good. It's going to take a lot of work for those guys to come together. But, in terms of excitement, extremely excited. Especially, I'm operating more from a level of confidence, having a little bit more familiarity with what we're walking into, whereas last go-around, I had no idea what to expect. So that's given me a lot of confidence here in this offseason.
Catch Hans and Scotty weekdays from noon to 3 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Your home for the best sports coverage in Utah. You're listening to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Want to remind you to join Hans and Scotty, broadcasting live from noon to 3, coming up on Thursday, at the Dyslexia Center of Utah Golf Tournament in Cedar Hills, or at Cedar Hills Golf Club. Check those guys out, coming up on Thursday. The story you thought I was distracted by is not the story I'm distracted by. There's actually multiple stories I'm distracted by. But we'll get to the story you thought I was distracted by in just one sec. But Could I tell you about the one I was actually distracted by?
Sure.
So get this, Ben. Bill Belichick's girlfriend, Jordan Hudson, has been approached to take part in the next season of Dancing with the Stars.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's right up her alley. That's what her future's going to look like, by the way.
According to the Daily Mail. Hold on. She's going to take a pass.
Sure.
She's taking a pass on it, Ben. Do you want to know why?
Because she's doing Real Housewives? What?
Quote, she likely will decline as it will be in the fall, the same time as Bill will be coaching, and she wants to be there for him and him at UNC.
She thinks Bill's actually going to be coaching?
I think she thinks she's going to be coaching.
Calling the shots.
Ben, now, sports sometimes gets a little weird because we see like parents move all over the country for their college kids and stuff, and I do think it's a little bit strange. But in normal relationships, and I don't want to speak for you, but I will talk about, I think my relationship is fairly normal at this point. Like when my wife has a work thing, she does her work thing, regardless of my work thing.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, maybe she'll try and schedule her trips out of town as strategically as she can around jazz season for the convenience of our family, et cetera, et cetera. But she's not waiting outside the studio right now, Ben, fawning over us, waiting for me to get done. You know what I'm getting? You know what I'm getting at? Like, why would you pass on Dancing with the Stars for your career for your boyfriend's job? Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does. What you're saying is, yes, I understand what you're saying. Well, no, nothing she's doing makes any sense.
Well, what she's doing is bleeding an old man dry.
Correct.
And you know why you pass on Dancing with the Stars to be around UNC football is because your number one priority is not your loving boyfriend. It's actually to bleed an old man dry.
By the way, I think Dancing with the Stars, with all due respect to the list of superstar celebrities who have danced with the stars, is a bit of a sign that you're washed, right?
It can be. I mean, that's
It's not like you're getting on White Lotus, which is the sign that you've made it, that you're an upcoming star or you're an existing star. It's a little bit of a sign of okay, we're at that. Okay, we're at that era of our career. Okay, that's interesting. Next, you're hosting a bad game show or something.
I think most the people on Dancing with the Stars aren't fallen celebrities. I think they're mostly reality celebrities.
Yeah,
or
C-listers.
C-listers. Or B-listers, depending on what you're looking at. That Robert Herjavec, the Shark Tank guy who ended up leaving his wife for his partner or whatever. It's that type of dude.
Correct.
It's not.
That's a C-lister.
Well,
maybe a B-lister, fine. I think Jordan...
But he's richer than all
Jordan
A-listers.
Jordan Hudson?
Yeah, she's right up their alley.
She is in her A-list phase, right? This is the peak of her powers.
This is where you make money and become famous.
But no, she right now is at the peak of her powers by not doing anything other than bossing Bill around and being a celebrity for that. She's not fallen off the perch yet. I think Dancing with the Stars is when you're post-perch, and she's on her perch. So I don't think she needs to go to that yet, because guess what? That will still be available to her next year.
But see, Dancing with the Stars is a step up for her.
I don't think it is. I actually think it's a step down.
Oh, see, I think you're totally wrong. Right now, she's only famous for her boyfriend.
Yeah, it's great. That's the best thing. She doesn't have to do anything.
This would be getting famous for something that she does.
There's risk in it. If you get washed the first episode, or however long, I don't even know how Dancing with the Stars works, but if you get eliminated early, then you're already a has-been.
Oh, see, now you're buying into the premise of the show. I don't care about the show and how well they do. This is just something that elevates your profile for her, like doing the Miss Maine thing. That's her thing.
Sure, it is.
If she were actually trying to create a career for herself,
well, yeah, she's not.
This would be a step up for her.
Well, no, she's not trying to do that.
I do think she's already above that.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying
I'm with you.
She's already above Dancing with the Stars. You know why? Because you talk about Jordan Hudson. You've never mentioned Dancing with the Stars before.
Very true.
But now we're talking about Jordan Hudson's celebrity, not Jordan Hudson bloodsucker.
Well, I think but the celebrity is working. She is a celebrity. She's a star right now. She's one of the names. She's got a ton of name value to where her interview that she's going to sell to Good Morning America or whatever is going to bring her more money than what she would get to be on Dancing with the Stars. Her book is going to get her more money than that. Dancing with the Stars, she's selling herself for cheap. That's the problem. This is coming.
Wait, hold on.
This is coming. It's just not. This is the wrong time to do it. This is out of order for her.
Give it 4 years.
Yeah, that's ring chasing. That's minimum contract stuff. That's okay. I just want to go out on a high note when my career is over. She's not at that point yet.
I guess my point is that if you just want to be famous, there are plenty of wags that are famous for being wags. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. I think her desire is not for fame. I think her desire partially is for fame, but I think it's partially because it's manipulative. It's power.
Yeah,
it's that sort of thing. If her thing was just to be famous, if it was just about famous, step up, step down, she's 1,000% doing this. But it's about more than being famous.
Yeah, I agree.
It's about, well, this powerful man is now mine, and I'm going to dictate all that they do. It's way more sick, in my opinion, than just, well, I just want to be famous. We see that all the time.
And I'm not pretending I know more about life than she does. I don't. But if I were to, what's the over-under on Bill Belichick games coached at North Carolina? If I set it at 11.5, would you take the over and the under?
No,
so am I.
Under. I don't think he's going to make it.
Right. He might not even get to the first of the season, but 11.5 would mean he doesn't even, if it's under, it means he doesn't finish the 12-game season, which is very realistic.
All right. Now, the story you thought I was distracted with.
But to that point, I think she thinks that this is a lasting ride.
Well, because he's only going to live for 10 more minutes.
But Bill is not going to be relevant all that long,
no,
actually. And then she's going to have to move on to her Dancing with the Stars days.
All right. Ben, what did you think I'd be distracted with?
That the Timberwolves, or the Portland Trailblazers are officially for sale. The Allen family.
There's not enough celebrity in that story to distract me, Ben.
Post Paul Allen. But you love teams being sold.
Love this stuff.
You love this billionaire movement stuff.
Yep.
It has relatively recent interest in the Jazz. What are the Jazz? It's crazy already with the fifth most recent team to sell. Celtics sold. The Hornets, I think, sold since
Rockets.
the Jazz. The Timberwolves have sold. I think the Rockets were before the Jazz, right? Tillman
Were they?
Fertitta was pre. Maybe they weren't.
But
It's whatever.
close.
Jazz are right in that 5 range, and Jazz were sold for whatever, $1.5 billion. I mean, you're going to talk about $3 billion at least for the Trailblazers. No, it's in Portland. It's a bigger market. I don't think it's a
It's not a
healthier
bigger
market. I don't think it's healthier.
I don't either.
I think there's more people.
Boston, Phoenix, Milwaukee,
yeah,
Dallas, and
Phoenix.
Charlotte.
Dallas,
All
geez.
since 2023.
That's crazy. I've forgotten all that.
It's because it's the world's greatest place to park your money. It is. It's the ultimate improving investment.
And I think some of these older owners are getting out of the biz.
Well, in Paul's case, he's dead.
He's dead. His
And-
daughter's getting out of the biz.
But his daughter was never really going to remain in the biz because, like, the kind of dictate of it all was all this stuff was going to be eventually liquidated and go to his philanthropy. He's not leaving all of his estate to the kids like some do. Like, most of his estate is going to charity and stuff.
Yeah.
So this was inevitable.
They're holding on to the Seahawks. They're not selling the Seahawks.
They might.
She says they're not in this release.
Yeah.
I'm curious if there is a view that the NBA might be at a bubble at the moment. That this huge TV deal that they got, which lasts 10 years, is a bubble compared to what the NFL is, which is it got a little overvalued just at this desire to have as much live sports as possible. And the NBA has a ton of games, so there's a lot of action there. But it's not actually as valuable as right now these teams are selling for $6, $4, $5 billion. If teams think that that's actually not what their value is going to be going forward. So they're getting out right now while the getting is quite good. I don't know if that's accurate or not.
I don't think it's accurate personally. Well, one, you mentioned how long the TV deal is, and two, the question is what happens post TV, and do media companies figure out a way to monetize that? And I would bet on that being yes. But the only thing people watch on TV is sports. That's it.
Yep.
It's become the world's greatest advertising vehicle. It has. It's how you get the most attention on your advertising and on your product, period. And the popular sports are going to be valuable going forward because it's a marketing tool. If nothing else, it's the world's greatest marketing tool. And if you can invest and you have an extra $3 billion that you need to park somewhere, there's no better place to park it. And I don't see that ever changing. Now, I think the media landscape will change some. I think like traditional television networks might be in a little trouble. And probably have been for some time. And they're going to have to figure out a way to monetize streaming. But what are they not going to do? Figure out how to monetize? Of course they're going to figure it out. And in 10 years, they're going to figure out how to monetize the best marketing tool on the planet. There's no way. I don't think it's a bubble. I really don't.
Yeah, it might not be. And look, people do need cash. You know, the Allens might need some cash. They might need some liquid money because, yes, you own a sports team. It's worth $8 billion, whatever the Seahawks are worth. I mean, it's a huge property. You own that. That's great. You're not necessarily having dollars with it that you get to play with, you know? So, yeah, you sell the Trailblazers and you get $3 billion and you split it with your brother or whatever the Allen family setup is, and you have money to actually spend in addition to all your other investments still making money. I get it.
I would believe now. I have no idea why the Millers sold the Jazz. I really don't. I have no clue what motivated that. But I do know it was part of a larger pivot because they sold out of the car industry at pretty much the same time. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure Gail Miller was part of it, was doing what you're talking about. Like there's other things I want to do with this cash. You know what, they bought all that land in Daybreak, the medical provider, they have a company. They pivoted to all sorts of different things. And now pivoting back to sports, interestingly enough. But I'm sure at least part of the reason they sold the Jazz was it was an overall pivot on what to do as a company with all that cash. Like, let's cash it out and let's go do something else. Think it's better for the community or our pocketbook or whatever the reason is. So maybe that's part of it. But I do know why the rush of the current billionaires to get in is because you're just not going to lose your money.
There's also an influx of billionaires right now. We're just seemingly getting more billionaires every second.
There's like 800 of them in the country.
There was like, I was thinking about this the other day. We were talking to, what's his name, who owns the Blitzer.
Oh, yeah.
Who owns the 76ers and everybody. I'm like, the number, and this is not a pat on the back, I promise you, the number of billionaires I have talked to. I mean, do you remember like when we were young? It's like, can you imagine
Ben's
somebody?
Gonna brag.
Can you imagine somebody being a millionaire? Like when we were young, it was like that was the unheard of, untouchable thing. It's like the number of billionaires that are in the circle that you and I revolve around, and most of our listeners will probably meet a billionaire in their life because Deloy Hansen.
Do you know how many
Ryan
there are
Smith,
in Utah? It's funny. I read an
Gail
article about
Miller.
this the other day. There are 4 in Utah.
Okay.
And Gail is the richest of them.
Okay.
She's
Gail,
the richest Utah citizen.
Ryan,
And
Deloy.
others. I don't know if Deloy is probably. I don't know who the 4th is. I just know that there's 4, and there's like 830 nationwide. Most of them are in New York and L.A.
But there's going to be 500 in 2 years.
And San Francisco.
And then there's going to be 1,000 in 3 years. And then we're going to have a trillionaire in the next 6 years.
It's not that far off.
one or
Matthew
two, yeah.
Prince, Ryan Smith, Jared Smith, Scott Watterson, Mark Hancock, and Jason Murray,
Are all billionaires?
according to Forbes,
Oh. Well, I should find that. I think I
along
saw
with
it.
Gail Miller.
I think I saw it in the Post. I'll have to look it up.
Forbes estimates 8 billionaires living in Utah.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I read an outdated
That's
article.
April 2025, so very recent.
Yeah. A lot of dough.
Yeah.
So we'll see where the Blazers go. That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
I'm sure that, much like, the Jazz, when the Millers sold the Jazz, it was a good thing for this community that an owner bought it that wanted to keep it here and was bought into Utah and all the stuff. Portland fans today, I'm sure, are worried about the same thing because they saw what happened in Seattle, and that could easily happen anywhere. So, especially a smaller market that isn't necessarily thriving like Portland at the moment.
Yep.
We'll see.
Yeah.
All right, stay tuned. We'll wrap up the show next. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present...
This is JJ and Alex.
Now, every team has been assigned a Heisman contender. Here's the dirty secret about BYU. Its best offensive player barely got to play last season. LJ Martin has serious ability when healthy. Is Aaron Roderick comfortable enough having a guy who will carry the ball 23 times? And I love this pick because that means that BYU will be centered around the run first, and then everything else can come from that, and I think that's where they're going to have a ton of success. The best thing that can happen to Jake Retzlaff's career
100%
is LJ Martin.
Yep.
Not just being healthy, but the run game being healthy, and the run game getting 5.5 per. That'd be amazing.
Your first best friend is a tight end, but another best friend is that running back, because if he's doing his thing, it makes things a lot easier for you. It's a lot easier to find guys open because defenses are keying on the run. So that would be very important for BYU.
Catch JJ and Alex afternoons from 3 to 6. Presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Whether it's the Jazz, Utes, Cougars, or Aggies, these guys have got you covered.
Time to eat, fellas.
You're locked on to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson
1, 2, 3, move it.
on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Two amigos on the airways, talking sports. They got him matrix and also loves his tie-dye. Ben's got style with his scarves. Oh my.
Jacob Ben, this segment brought to you by Peach Doors and Windows. Amazing home transformations begin with Peach, or 5-star reviews are the norm. Call them today for your free in-home estimate, 801-566-1255. Peach Doors and Windows. Also want to remind you about Teton Wealth. Ethan Millard with Teton Wealth will be live in studio with Hanson Scotty coming up today to help you with your retirement plan. Tune in or visit retireteton.com.
Jazz fans are feeling bad today, obviously. Bulls fans. The Bulls lost the tiebreaker with the Dallas Mavericks, so all the lottery balls that the Mavericks got would have been the Bulls, based on a coin toss.
Yikes.
And the Bulls, I think, are drafting 12 or somewhere in that range, and Mavericks move up to number 1. That's toughy. That's a double blow for the old Bulls there.
I still don't understand quite fully why the fan base is angry. Like Scotty was saying, he's never seen this much anger since he's been in this market. I could ask him about that off the air.
So the 5 stages of grief go denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So we are at the anger stage.
Yeah, okay.
What's next?
Bargaining.
Oh, yeah, you try and trade up.
So that's when you say, yeah, maybe we can still trade up.
Yeah, maybe we can get number 2. And then number 3 is what?
Depression.
Yeah, that's coming.
And then acceptance.
Yeah, acceptance. We'll start in like early June. Like this all comes quickly. And then there'll be some people who are like, I'm excited about 5, actually. 5's okay.
And the first stage was denial. It's like, no way.
Yeah,
that
not
can't,
possible.
Yeah. So This checks out.
We're going through it. We're seeing it all from the Jazz fan base.
Are they grieving though?
Yes. Enormously.
Seems a little extreme, no?
Well, that's what we built our careers on.
I still come back to it's odds in gambling and that sort of thing. I don't think I've ever been grieving when I walked away from a table.
Oh, but a lot of people do.
Grieve?
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
That's why alcohol sells so well in Vegas.
I don't know if that's the reason, but
Part
sure.
of it.
Yeah.
A lot of people washing their tears away.
I don't think that's all of it.
But that's why bars are recession-proof, right? I lost all my money. It's horrible.
I do think...
Well, go to the bar.
I do think people drink because they're depressed. I'm a little alarmed that you think the only reason to drink is you're depressed.
No, it's not the only, but it's why it thrives. It's a part of why it thrives.
Every time I see you having a beer, I'm going to think, Ben, are you okay?
It's Ben doing all right.
Is Ben doing all right? Did he have to have a drink after work? Did it go that badly?
No. The answer is no.
Okay, good. I just thought we'd clear that up. Ben's drinking because he's depressed again.
No. Not the case.
All right, good. All right, I understand fans are disappointed. I do. I just didn't connect the anger thing. Like, who are you mad at?
I think there is mad because there were a lot of Jazz fans who did not like tanking, who thought that was a stupid approach, and they feel very vindicated today. And I think there are some fans that are taking a victory lap, which I think you get to.
I haven't seen very many victory laps, you think?
No, I think they're taking their victory lap in the form of anger towards how this rebuild
the strategy?
is going. Yeah, towards the strategy. And then you blame the people who put in place the strategy. Danny Ainge, Justin Zanuck, Ryan Smith. I'm seeing that. I've definitely seen that on my timeline.
There's also a lot of anger towards the league, whether or not, it was rigged. And obviously that's a whole other conversation. But just looking at Dallas jumping up after they traded away Luka,
Sure.
I feel like that's where a lot of the anger that I see is coming from. Like, why can't the Jazz
Yeah, of course.
be lucky?
Can I ask you a weird question?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know. This is where my mind goes. Because I actually would buy in at least somewhat to the NBA lottery could be rigged. Like, there's a lot of coincidences that you can point to, including that Dallas just sold. And one of those coincidences in the past has been if you buy a franchise, you get a number one pick. It happened with the Pelicans.
Right.
It's happened several times. So I could actually come along with that. But let me ask you this. Rigging the NBA draft lottery, is that illegal?
I believe it is.
See, I always wondered that with the movie the movie Quiz Show. Did you ever see that movie?
Uh-huh.
It was about rigging a game show.
Right. Robert Redford.
And Ralph, I'm going to call him Ralph, Fiennes. But I always wondered, is there really a law against rigging a game show? Why would there be a law against rigging a game show?
I think there is something about, games of chance and whether there's money on the line and how that works. But I don't know.
Like, rigging reality shows happens all the time, right? I mean, if you want to look at it that way. Like, there are certain scenes in, like, Jersey Shore, for example, where they're, like, smashing up a bar where you can see in the mirror, like, people standing. Like, you can see in the mirror that they've made up the whole scene, right? They, like, set it up. Like, they didn't actually lose their minds and start smashing up a bar. It was, like, set up to be that.
Although contest rigging, this is from our friends at Wikipedia, although contest rigging was not a criminal offense, this is specifically in relation to the rigging of game shows in the 50s, several producers and dozens of contestants chose, rather than publicly to admit they were frauds, to perjure themselves before a grand jury, which of course is legal.
So that's illegal. So the rigging of the game show wasn't illegal, but they lied about it, which is illegal. So I wonder, I mean, collective bargaining might make rigging the lottery illegal?
Yeah.
Might. I don't know. I was thinking about that, though. Everybody's been out of shape about rigging. It's because we all think, everything should be fair at all times. But is there actually a law against...
WWE's not illegal. It's rigged.
Right.
Right. It's all scripted.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
Now, if Adam Silver were asked about it in front of a congressional committee and lied about it, that would be illegal, which is really interesting what you looked up there.
I don't know.
Why not rig it, right? If you're just creating a TV show, which essentially is what the NBA does, why not do it? Some owners might be grumpy, but if you don't tell anybody about it and you just do it.
Yeah. By the way.
Is that actually illegal? I don't think so.
Agreed. What you easily could have done, though, right? The easier path to this, if you want to be the conspiracy theorist, is you don't have Because the conspiracy is as follows. The NBA instructs Nico Harrison to trade Luka Doncic to the Lakers with the understanding that he will get payment on the back end. Right? That's how this conspiracy, that's a crux of this conspiracy. The easier thing is to just tell the Lakers, hey, go to the lottery this year. We're rigging the lottery. You're going to get Cooper Flag. It doesn't matter if you're 14, 13, or 12.
You know what's funny, though, is what if it had nothing to do with the Lakers? What if it had everything to do with Nico knew he was getting the number 1 pick and doesn't like fat, vapey Luka, and knew that if he let Luka know that he was going to trade him, then Luka would have put the brakes on it. So just trade him overnight. You know you're getting the number 1 pick on the back end.
If you knew you were getting the number 1 overall pick, I don't think you would trade Luka. Because honestly, the best case scenario is you team 25-year-old Luka with Cooper Flag.
Except for you're talking about Luka, who doesn't let other people play. So he'd be stepping on. And, I mean, talk about egos. You think Luka would just be like, oh, I'm okay with the number 1 pick and I'm going to let him play basketball? I doubt it.
I just think it's too easy to poke holes in these conspiracies.
I don't know.
Because there's easier pathways to do it. And there's a reason for everyone to have a conspiracy to win it.
And maybe the NBA wanted the Lakers to win now. Not because LeBron's 105. I don't know, but there's a lot of coincidences in the history of the draft.
There are a lot of coincidences. It is a league of coincidences. It's because it's a small league.
I agree.
And everyone's intertwined, and there's a lot of movement all the time, which is ripe for conspiracy.
All right, stay tuned. Hanson, Scotty are next.
Thanks, Christian.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.